and administration, and also an opportunity to welcome those who are streaming and watching from the comfort of home. And so welcome to our public meeting of October 27th. And roll call, all members of council are present. And we didn't have that meeting at 4 o'clock was not a closed meeting, so we had no meetings to report. And so we'll dispense with the moment of silence and national anthem, and we'll go right into disclosure of pecuniary interest on the agenda as presented to you this evening. None, we'll have that reflected in the minutes. And speaking of minutes, we have the minutes of the regular council meeting, October 13th, 2020, and the public council meeting, October 13th, 2020, the ZBA on housekeeping amendments to the sandwich cell zoning bylaw. Could I have a motion on those minutes? Moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti, supported by Councilor Houston. Any errors or omission on those minutes as presented to you this evening? I hear none. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. I don't believe there are supplementaries this evening. We do?
Yes, Your Worship. We have the one communication that was added as a supplementary item with regards to the announcement of the DMAP funding.
Oh, geez, 24 hours and I forgot already. I've been preoccupied today, as you all know, and so with that, yes, there is one item that we'd like to add to the agenda. So on the subs, Councillor Altenhoff moves, Councillor Houston support. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. We'll move on to delegations. In our first delegation, or our only delegation tonight is the BIA, or Business Improvement Area, the Board of Management. I believe present is Candice Dennis, our chair. I believe the treasurer, Paul Bastani, Joe Fratigelli, and Linda Proctor are directors, also joining them this evening. So I'll go to the chair, Candice. Welcome to our meeting this evening. Paul, Linda, and welcome.
Thank you.
Your Worship, Council, thank you. Thanks for having us. As you know, tonight we are approaching Council seeking approval on the proposed 2021 budget. This budget has been approved by the membership, and we're absolutely eager for hopefully a more active 2021. I believe there we go. In order to keep with our allocated timeline and answer any questions, I'm just going to jump right in. I'll go through this budget line by line, and should there be any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, make note, or ask later. Going through, you'll see on the levy, we're not looking for any increases there, and of course hoping that levies will stay the same as they have for 2020, with a total of 132,000, 1,500 on adjustments, 500 on the associate membership as we currently have in 2020. And we are looking to make a transfer from our quite robust reserve account of $24,050. This will come back around, but those funds are very much to move and push support the membership in our Tecumseh Dollars campaign. So we'd like to put some more funds behind that and really see that continue to grow, as we've seen such positivity in 2020 with that plan. Additionally, we've got 7,600 for events and sponsorship revenue in hopes that we can go back to events. That is the goal for 2021, looking at night markets and our Christmas party as well. I know those were both missed events this year, but wasn't everything. Continuing on, we're looking at interest revenue for a total budget revenue of 167,550. Moving on to our administrative expenses, $100 consistent for 2020 on permits and licenses, Accounting and legal fees, you'll see a little bit of an increase there at 10.9 over 2020, and that's made up of audit and our bookkeeper. As you know, we've outsourced that, so there's some expense there. We're looking at an increase in some bank charges as well, and that increase is mainly made up of the square fees associated to the Tecumseh Dollars campaign, again, which we're seeing such success in. So we move on, we're looking at the insurance for 200, clothing expense of 3, another 1,000 on meals and entertainment, 17 in education, seminars, and conferences, in hopes that we can look forward to being a part of the OBIA conferences again in 2021. We're looking at memberships and associations at 250, again, going towards the OBIA membership. 12 on our rent and lease for the year for 2021, and other miscellaneous office expenses at 18, and that could be furniture, computers, printers, office supplies under that line. Freight and courier fees at 200, software and computer expenses at 2,000. Any repairs and maintenance that we may need as well, we're looking at 1,350 on that line. Thank you, Sean. 1,700 on our telephone and internet expenses on the year, 300 for hosting our website. 1,800 associated to travel is again tied into the hopes that we can get back to our seminars and the OBIA conference this year. 300 on mileage as we keep that consistent year to year, and salaries and wages for our coordinator position in 2020. We're looking at some estimates there as well on EI and CPP for a subtotal of 8215. Moving on to advertising and marketing, you'll see a slight decrease there over 2020 at 12.8, and that's made up of areas, various marketing through media, signage, our acknowledgements and recognitions, grand openings, our Ask the Experts campaign. So that's all tied into advertising and marketing. We're looking at sponsorships and donations as well, and under there we tend to look at what we can do to help sponsor or subsidize sponsorships for our memberships with Cornfest and Christmas in Tecumseh, which again we hope to see back in 2021. Promotional photography at $100, and then what you'll see is the grand change there of an increase to 35,000 on the Tecumseh Dollars expense, where we see where our actuals are and some shifts we've made to provide funds to that line in 2020. We're very eager to get behind this program even more and see our membership flourish from something like the Tecumseh Dollar program. So we look at a subtotal on that section for 51.4. We move into beautification for a budget of 34,000, and that's a combination of areas such as Christmas lights and decoration and other beautification within the town. I know we've been looking at some opportunities and maybe making some changes to the bus bench that sits outside of our office. So we're eager to come up with some plans for 2021 on moving those funds as well and adding to the beautification of the town. That brings us to a grand total of completely even on the year per the revenue of $167,550 for 2021. Are there questions? And again, you'll see that shift there as we do move down. Thank you to the reserve, as we are looking to move that 24.5, I believe that number was, to move towards our Tecumseh budgets or Tecumseh Dollars budget. And accommodate that. Does council have any questions regarding our budget?
Councilor Houston, Councilor Tonio.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Candace. You know, as you mentioned, the Tecumseh Dollars program has really taken off this year, and there is just a huge amount of demand for it. So could you go in just a little more detail and explain that Tecumseh Dollars program? Because I don't know why everybody is actually aware of how we run that program.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you, Brian. And for everybody hearing this information, I'd suggest you consider Tecumseh Dollars for your next purchase or gift, or spread the word as well. There's a great deal of the membership, but not all of it. And we're working towards that in getting more members involved in accepting Tecumseh Dollars just as cash. And that's what we're asking members to do. Anyone that wishes to purchase Tecumseh Dollars can do so. Any purchase over $50 will save them 20%. So ideally, they're saving 20% on anything within our membership that's currently accepting Tecumseh Dollars, which is a great drive, I think, to shop local, shop Tecumseh, and encourage folks perhaps to look at shopping with one of our members as opposed to someone who isn't. We've seen great success. And if you looked back at that budget where we budgeted and with a little push this year, a little more push, given where we were and how we can support the membership during the time we're in, we really push towards that. So I look forward to continuing that in 2021. We are working on some strategies to manage those month to month. I'm very eager to see what Denise can do. We are already in our giveaway for our holiday, which we've been doing for quite a few years now, a holiday draw where we encourage people to get involved. We're already changing that a bit, of course, because of COVID, but I think it'll work in our benefit through social media this year. So we're eager to hit the ground running in 2021 and get more members on board accepting those. So please do spread the word. If they redeem that back with us, we give them the full cash value of that. So they really should be, if whenever possible, accepting it just like cash. I think it's a great way to drive business locally.
Candace, just on that, do you have, for the benefit of, for us, we could even put it on certainly our website as well, a list of those who are accepting those dollars? Because again, it's an opportunity for us to, to promote it. I think it's a great idea. 20% is 20%. And it might encourage maybe as well other businesses that are not involved in the program to get involved. So I think that'd be, appropriate if we had a list of those who are accepting those dollars, and then we could certainly put that up on our website under the BIA.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I agree. The more businesses that know and see that businesses are accepting them and benefiting from that, the more that we'll get involved. We do have a list of accepting businesses on our website. And Denise, if you can make a note, let's get that over to the town and see if we could get that shared there as well. I think that's a wonderful resource.
Or maybe a link. I was going to ask Sean if there's a list of members who accept. Yeah, there you go. It's there.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
See, I've just been educated, so it's all there.
I would like to add too that the change up this year in the giveaway, I think, is already encouraging more businesses to get involved. We're kind of doing a little bit of a scavenger hunt around town with some of the members, and they can kind of see where our mascot is shopping and take their guesses and enter on Facebook through the website. Of course, changing that to a digital approach this year, not wanting to drive needless traffic just to fill out ballots. So we're already spreading that message and growing more and more businesses accepting, and we look forward to continuing to grow that base.
Excellent. Councilor Tonio, and then Deputy Mayor Becchetti.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Good job, Candace and BIA. Just a suggestion I have, I don't know if it's too close to Christmas, but my thought was if you guys had purchased bags with various gift cards and gifts from our local communities, and then I buy that bag from you, that I give a gift to my children or friends and family. So if you guys had gift bags made up of $50, $100, different products from our local businesses, trying to generate more income for them during this COVID Christmas time, I would gladly buy a bag off of you guys that have various gift cards and items from our local community. So just a suggestion if you want to or not, but I thought it'd be a cool idea where you generate the sales by buying all the gift cards and different things, making up bags and then trying to resell them. Obviously, you don't want to be stuck with everything. You could do it by order or things like that. I'll let you guys figure that out if you agree with the idea. So I just want to bring that another generating revenue for our businesses here in our town. And I also would like to promote the businesses to our residents online here and ask them to try harder and harder to purchase items from Tecumseh, our local communities right now during this COVID time where businesses are really struggling, the small businesses, and they need our help. And I think that's how we can help them. I'll certainly be buying all my Christmas gifts locally. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toniel. I absolutely think that's a wonderful idea and something that the board and committees can discuss. It's something I hadn't considered, but another alternative. Thank you for that. And again, I welcome council and anyone who has, some suggestions that are a little out of the box to bring them forward. That's fantastic. Thank you.
And if you need help, I'm not one to give you work and not to give me work. So if you need help, give me a shout and I'll come and help you with that or anything.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, certainly as a big promoter of shop local, I'd be interested in that idea as well. And I think it's a great idea to help our community, especially under COVID conditions, especially our restaurant business and many others that have really taken a beating. So that I think is a great idea.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to Candace, Chair, and the BIA board members that joined tonight. It's nice to see a large crowd, even though it's virtually not face-to-face, but hopefully we'll get back to that, table discussion at the town hall where we'll be able to meet everyone. And I'd like to welcome Denise, the new coordinator. I believe this is one of your first official Zoom meetings at council, so welcome. And, there's a lot of good positives happening in town. And like I say, with even with the Main Street development there, I could see BIA playing a big role there with Christmas decorations. When those apartments go up, that creates foot traffic, which creates a lot of energy down, and I call it downtown Tecumseh. So a lot of positives in the next few years. Just a question going back to the budget, Candace or Paul, whoever can answer regarding the BIA in terms of salaries. The BIA coordinator in the past used to be 1.5. Is the budget proposing that same amount? Is it 2.0? Is it 1.0? Just so in terms of, what it was and where it's going, where the board's direction is.
Yeah, so we went from a staff, as you know, of 1.5 and looked at making some changes with bookkeeping. We just found that it was the right decision to make, I think, for the board and the organization. So that's why we see that increase for outsourcing the bookkeeping. And we, as you may or may not know, Paula has for the past over a year been 4 days a week. And so Denise comes on board with us as one full-time 5-day-a-week position. And so that's what that line does cover off is one coordinator. Right now we're in a learning phase, and we had accommodated for that in 2020, knowing that we were looking to replace, I don't know if that's the right word, but Paula. And so, yeah, we will be moving forward in 2021 with one full-time coordinator and continuing to outsource the bookkeeping.
That's great. It looks like, in terms of finding efficiencies, you got to give credit to the board and also to acknowledge Councillor Dowie, who's the council liaison rep and who does a great job taking notes only, not only at the minutes, but also in social media, and Councillor Houston, who's also BIA board member and council as well. So keep up the good job, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions or comments to the BIA representatives?
My final comment, if we don't mind, would just be to come back to that wonderful idea that Councillor Toniel came up with that may take some time, but I do want to look at what the budget looks like currently for 2020 and what opportunities are there. But please, as a final reminder on that note, don't forget the Tecumseh dollars, because that's another great way that we can support local, and you can save a little money while you're doing that in the meantime.
Okay, that's great. And while we have the members here of the BIA as well, is that can we move in support of the, if I can get a motion on the budget?
I believe Councillor Dowie did have his hand up. I just wanted to make note before we.
Where is he? Oh, there he is.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Like trying to watch a Brady Bunch, on go ahead, Councillor Dowie. Sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Actually, with kind of following the discussion of Councillor Toniel's idea, I know a couple of service groups in the community have done so independently. creating gift card draws and gift sets. So there's certainly opportunity for partnership there. If leave the work to the others, but maybe the BIA would advertise. I think there's a win-win there with some of the existing campaigns that are going on.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dowie. Okay, I'll try one more time. Any further questions or comments at this stage? If not, then just a motion that we adopt the budget as presented to us. Councillor Houston and Councillor Altenhoff. Questions or comments? Having heard none, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried.
Thank you.
Well, Candace and company, thank you. Thank you for coming out this evening and presenting your budget. And again, I just want to say thank you, for your hard work. I've been impressed in the last 6 or 7 months under COVID and the amount of new interests and businesses that have been opening up in the community under some maybe not ideal conditions when you think of it in terms of the business, but certainly you're out there supporting them. So I want to continue to press that. And there's great things happening in town. There's a lot of activity, a lot of investment. We got a new business coming into town. We're going to be talking about that tonight, and so we're certainly looking forward to continuing the relationship with the BIA, and hopefully, we can get back to normal. And so let's keep our fingers crossed in 2021. I know it's going to be kind of a tough start with obviously still COVID still in present, but hopefully as summer marches on and into the fall of next year, vaccines will be there, and we'll be able to move up to another stage, which will enhance again the opportunities for the business community.
Yeah, well, we look forward to hitting the ground running one way or another. And if that means kind of reinventing continually, then we look at doing that, whatever it takes to support the membership. So thank you very much, Your Worship, Council.
Thank you. Have a good evening, and to all, stay safe and continue to do what you're doing.
All right.
You as well.
Okay. Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Nice meeting you all.
All right, members of council, we'll move on to communications. We have 8 pieces of communications, and if I could have a motion to receive. Councilor Tonio, Councilor Jobin, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Communications action required, there's none, but I certainly want to have an opportunity to talk a little bit about this wonderful announcement that we did get yesterday, 10.7 million from federal government to aid on our flood mitigation plan. And it's nice to be in front of a camera and sing the praises of getting this wonderful announcement, but it takes a lot of folks and a lot of people behind the scenes to really do a lot of the heavy lifting. And I want to take this opportunity on behalf of our citizens and council. And I want to thank Margaret, our CAO, Phil Bartnick, our Director of Public Works and Environmental Services, John, as well, our manager, and all of the management team that were involved in that. And I know Tom Kitsos, our treasurer, obviously he's mindful of our dollars, and everybody else. And I think who participated, I know even from the fire department, from Wade, and preparing our emergency plans and so forth. So I can't say enough, but thank you. And I'm hearing through the grapevines that if it wasn't the top application, it was darn near one of the top application, and it was oversubscribed 11-1, according to our MP, Eirik Kuzmerchik. And again, with Eirik's help, and certainly I want to send my praises to him and thank him for his hard work over the course of the year. And Minister McKenna, Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, and for seeing the merits of this great application. So I'm looking forward to see those pumping stations being dismantled, rebuilt, and it's another piece of the puzzle, and continuing to add to a lot of good things that we've done since 2011. So on behalf of, again, all of our constituency within the community, thank you to administration for the hard work in putting this plan together. It's one of those applications that you just couldn't say no to. So thank you, for the great work, and to members of council for looking at and listening, obviously, and working with our constituency. And we've heard loud and clear, and we've dealt with it through our strategic plan, how important it was to take care of the basic infrastructure in the community. We've gone through it, and many of us had to wear rubber boots and take care of our own basements and other areas. So we know, the pain that many of our constituents went through. So this is a great start. It's not the panacea, but it's one heck of a great start for us. And, we still have a couple more pumping stations to upgrade in other areas in the community. And, but this goes a long way of bringing those projects together, and certainly help and give confidence for developers in the community that whatever they build and whoever buys into the community, we're doing our due diligence. So to council, for your vision, thank you. And it's a great team Tecumseh effort. And so congrats to all of us. And so it's just a wonderful announcement for all of us. All right, committee minutes. We have the minutes of the Police Services Board of October the 15th. Can I have a motion to receive those minutes? Councillor Dowie and Councillor Jobin. Any comments on that? Yes, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just with respect to the Police Services Board minutes of October 15th, there's a highlight or a note in there about the volunteer screening applications, and under COVID, that appeared to cease to be an in-person 10-minute process and move to an online process with a backlog of about 3 to 4 weeks. And now I understand that that's been disabled and it's no longer in place. So I see reference to that in the minutes. I know some volunteer groups are starting to have to resort to paid background checks, and they're asking me when the service might be restored with the OBP. I'm wondering if that was covered at the Police Services Board. What residents' expectations could be for restoration of that service, if at all.
Maybe I'll defer that to our CAO, Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mayor, through the chair to council. Yes, that was discussed. The staff sergeant went over the whole process. They do, and then the inspector also addressed it, and they certainly acknowledged that there have been challenges with their online platform that they are still working to resolve, with the intent to clear out the backlog by the end of the year. So I think they are aware of the issues that people are having and trying to resolve that, but continuing to use an online platform for those clearances as opposed to in person.
Go ahead, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to the CAO, would you have the information as to whether the days of getting a clearance within 10 to 15 minutes are gone forever, or will this online process replicate that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Dowie, there was no commitment provided at the meeting by the inspector with respect to timing. This is something that is now being centralized as opposed to handled at local offices. So I don't think that the detachment has a lot of control. There wasn't a commitment made one way or the other with respect to timing of their turnaround time once they get the backlog cleared out. They spoke though to trying to clear the backlog out, recognizing that people are waiting for, far too long for these types of services.
But I must say, Councilor Dowey as well, is that the, Police Services Board itself will continue to press that issue because it is critical. And as businesses and especially the volunteer groups and schools opening and there's a higher demand for police clearances, so it's critical. The biggest issue as they centralize this, I don't know if they realized, or maybe they should have realized the volume and the impact, and so I'm hoping that the message really not only from us but from the rest of the PSBs and other communities are resonating within them, that they've got to sharpen up. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Next, we have the general meeting, and it was in the town of Tecumseh Business Improvement Area, the March 4th, 2020 and October 14th, 2020 annual general meetings. And a motion to receive those minutes. Councillor Tonio and Councillor Houston. Any questions or comments on those as presented? Haven't heard none. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. We are now going to move to our corporate services and clerk reports, the first two. So it's corporate services 2020-33 Manning Road farm lease and the option to to renew. I don't know if Ms. Moy, if you want to bring that report forward, and then I'll ask council for a resolution.
Thank you, Your Worship. So last year, council entered into a one-year term lease with Olinda Farms as part of that lease agreement for the 1,800 acres of land which the town holds at just off of Baseline Road near Fairplay Woods. The farmer was also given the opportunity to renew that lease for an additional 2 years. So he has made that request of council, and his prior experience with him over the past year has been positive. He's made good on his timely payments and provided his insurance and requisite farm information. So we are asking council to approve his request for a 2-year extension to the lease agreement. The lease agreement does also contain a provision that should the town need any portion of those lands for any part of the year, we would give him notice for those lands. In consultation with senior administration team, we're not anticipating use of those lands for 2021 for any municipal purposes at this time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Council's pleasure on renewal for 2 years. Councilor Altenhoff, move. Do I support? Councilor Houston, any questions or comments? I'm hearing none. Yep, go ahead, Councilor Jobin.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Moy. Are we going to go by a bi-weekly basis, and or are we going to consider to ever have this up for a tender process, or is it not to meet a certain value?
So we have been leasing the lands to the same farmer, which leases the 424 lands. We've done that traditionally since, I guess, the town took ownership of the property, given it's such a small area. This lease will come up in 2 years, so we can review the process again at that time and who the farmer is for 424.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no further questions or comments. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. Our second report is from Corporate Services 2020-34 St. Clair Beach Retirement Community Parking Lease Agreement. That one is pretty self-explanatory. Move, Councillor Altenhoff. Support, Deputy Mayor Bichetti. Any questions or comments? None, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Next, we'll move on. Financial services, the services 2020-15, that's the budget variance report up to August 31st, 2020. And I'd like to call on our treasurer, Mr. Kitsos, there he is, to bring us the variance report, and then I'll then turn it over to council for resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, members of council. This is our budget variance report as at August 31, 2020. So typically we just bring this report forward asking it to be received. This time around, we're also asking that council authorize administration to apply to the Safe Restart Agreement Phase 2 grant funding, provided financial analysis conducted prior to October 30th satisfies program eligibility. We've revamped, redesigned this report a bit. So I just want to mention that at the beginning. So you'll see we've kind of summarized the figures in the main body of the report. So typically you would see a rather lengthy report with a lot of detail. So what we've done is we've summarized it in the body within the first 6 pages or so. We have included the full detail though as an attachment to this report. So if we can scroll back to the top there. Thanks, Sean. So all departments, of course, review their budgets at the August variance, and we ask them to project year-end figures to get an idea of what the surplus or deficit might be. So you may recall that at the June variance, we projected a relatively small deficit of around $200,000. And I say relatively small considering we were into COVID and our state of emergency, and we were having a lot of our revenues were impacted. Of course, since that time, there's been a significant change, and of that, there's been a couple. Of course, we've entered into stage 3 of the recovery, and the economy, or the local economy at least, has been able to maintain that, which has been good. Additionally, of course, we've received, the town has been allocated around $580,000 of the Safe Restart Agreement grant from it's a federal provincial program to help the municipality towards financial impacts due to COVID-19. So that was obviously a significant variance for this go around. Additionally, of course, through council's direction and senior management team, there were significant cost containment measures implemented immediately following the state of emergency announcement. And you'll see, we'll go into the detail later, that proved very effective in mitigating the potential loss that we could have faced. So right now we're projecting a surplus of roughly 1.3 million. 1.1 million would come from the tax supported services, and around $200,000 coming from our rate supported services, which is water and wastewater. So in the background section, we do detail a bit of the grant program. So you'll see that there were 4 streams of this program. So the government has issued, they've allocated 50% of the potential funding to municipalities based on a formula. It's formula based and based on those 4 streams. So we were the beneficiary of streams 3 and 4, the transit supports and the municipal operating fund. So the streams are relatively similar in that they are to be used towards COVID-19 impacts for calendar year 2020. Both programs allow that if there is some funding left over, that they can be carried forward into 2021. So the transit stream allows us to carry forward unused funds up to March 31st, 2021, whereas the municipal operating stream allows us to carry forward into all of 2021. So if we go now to the comments section, so this will explain the variances. So you see again there the total variance of 1.3 million. So what we've done, we've broken out this report to separate the impact of COVID-19. So in this first section, We've identified revenue losses, so which was the greatest impact to the town financially. In total, we were projecting around 1.2 million. The bulk, a big part of that is arena ice rental, which is around $283,000 we're projecting. Of course, we had both ice pads closed for 4 months. Arena concessions were closed in March and will not reopen this year. Lottery licensing has taken a hit. With the hall closed, we're expecting a shortfall of around $144,000 there. Through our financial relief measures, we instituted penalty and interest, the waiving of penalty and interest. So that will reduce our revenue of around $187,000 there. We typically would receive around $100,000 in provincial offenses fines. This year, the collections were suspended temporarily. We have been advised that it is likely that we will receive nothing this year. The outdoor pool typically we would expect to generate around $138,000. And then you'll see Corn Festival and special events would generate around $122,000. And the other large item there is the rec programs, and that's day camp canceled is around $100,000 in revenue. So after revenue, the revenue impact, then we identified some non-budgeted expenditures that we incurred and we expect to incur through to the end of the year. So these were relatively contained to around $138,000 there. So the largest item there, of course, is the additional janitorial protective equipment and barriers that were installed and will be installed. So expecting around $71,000 for the year. We've also instituted, backing it up, we've also instituted a screening at Town Hall Security. So that is expected to be maintained up until the end of the year. And that's for our visitors that they come into Town Hall. And then from there, so those two will total around roughly $1.3 million. And so then if we go to our cost containment measures, you'll see that they were quite effective. So primarily the savings came from wages and benefits, and that was primarily students and part-time staff of close to $750,000. Savings through the recreation programs are close to $300,000. Majority of staff have reduced their professional development or education budgets to the tune of almost $150,000. And by closing down the pool and the pool, yes, in the summer, and then closing down, taking out the ice pads, both ice pads, really saved us a lot in utilities of close to $80,000. So our cost containment measures came close to equaling our impact to COVID. And these are projected figures, of course, these aren't final, so these are projected to year end. So then in the next table, we have grant funding or assistance that we've received following the pandemic. So through the Safe Restart Agreement, we'll get close to $35,000 for the transit stream. So we expect that we will need $25,000 this year to offset shortfall in bus fares. The remainder will be carried forward to offset what we anticipate will be lower bus fares for the first quarter of 2021. The general fund we were allotted roughly $554,000, which we will apply entirely this year to the direct COVID costs that we have experienced. We also received some grant funding for students, and we were able to secure close to $70,000 there. So $650,000 in total, so that the total COVID impact is actually a surplus right now of $580,000. Of course, we caution that COVID is not over, and the SRA programs do indicate that we are allowed to carry those funds over, and we definitely anticipate that we will require these funds or reserves in 2021. So in the next section, so before I go to regular items, we've got additional impacts of COVID. So just at the top of page 6 there. So what we did not compute financial figures for. There's also other impacts of COVID that we like to remind the community that there's not just the financial impacts, but there's also the impacts to the delivery of our programs. So there's additional hours to complete tasks due to safety protocols, such as 1 person per vehicle. There's additional training and travel time for employees that are redeployed. And there's times and resources invested in COVID-19 planning and response at the expense of budgeted program and service delivery. So we haven't tallied what that would amount to year to date. But what we can tell you is that we do have a tally for the first 6 weeks, and it amounts to around $150,000 worth of staff wages and benefits that were put towards COVID response, and that's just in the first 6 weeks. So we are tallying the figures, so we will have those figures for the end of the year, but for this report, we only had the first 6 weeks. So it just shows you a considerable amount of time and effort was put in, and unfortunately, it's at the expense of some other programs. So with respect to the COVID impact, I'll say that the costs and the revenues there that were shown, the large majority of it affected the tax supported services. But the reporting that we have there in COVID is for the corporation in its entirety. So that includes the impact to rates as well. However, they were not nearly impacted. So the remainder of the surplus is roughly 744,000. Of that 744, around 500,000 comes from the operating of the tax supported services. So that's not water, wastewater. And the major drivers there, major variances are, we did have some assessment growth from prior year of $260,000. We do have a shortfall of in-year assessment growth, so that reduces that amount by about 100,000. Tax write-offs are trending down. We anticipate a surplus there of 136,000. Wages and benefits for gapping and vacancies are coming in around close to $200,000 under budget. However, that is offset by overtime, position overlaps, and retirements that are close to $280,000 over budget. Utilities, we have a savings of 31,000 that is not directly tied to COVID. Gasoline, 34,000, that's primarily lower commodity prices and consumption. We do have some drivers that have exceeded budget, and that's vehicle parts and service. So we've had several expensive repairs this year. And we've had a mild winter, reducing our expected salt cost by 68,000, and materials and equipment rental are down close to 100,000. So those are the major drivers of the variance for our regular activities. We're anticipating a surplus of, as I said, close to around $500,000 for the tax supported services. So then for rates supported, so we're anticipating a surplus of roughly $225,000. We will see a shortfall. We're anticipating a shortfall in water and wastewater user fees. So consumption is a little below what we had budgeted. I think we had factored in some growth this year, and so some of our development is coming on, but it's just coming on a little later than we had anticipated. Wages and benefits, again, we have some gapping and vacancies that will show us a surplus of 101,000. Our water purchase cost is we're projecting a favorable variance of around 130,000. And that's our estimated cost at the time of budget was higher than what the actual cost came in at. And of course, volumes are down. So we'll see that reflected the offset on the revenue side. And then we have some other minor variances there identified between materials and water flood preparedness, which are greater than budget for a total of close to 60,000. And that's offset by a little lower participation in our grant program for the backwater valve of roughly 50,000. So those items explain close to 200,000 of the 225,000 favorable variance. So as I said earlier, that so what we're trying to do is highlight the major drivers. The entire list of the items that are 5,000 or greater are included in this report as attachment 2. So then with our capital life cycle, so we do ask the directors to take a look at their capital projects and provide us an update on the status of where those projects are and where they anticipate they will be by the end of the year. So this is another section of the report that we're trying to enhance a bit. So typically we would provide some information here on the tenders that had occurred during the year. So we do have that information here. And I won't go into that detail. What we've added a bit is we tried to provide some information on the number of projects that we are working on this year and the total budgeted capital amount of those projects. So you'll see this year we had a huge capital expenditure budgeted, and a large portion of that, of course, was for the anticipated sportsplex. Nonetheless, 100 projects, it sounds like a lot. Of course, this is the first time that we're reporting these kinds of numbers, so we'll see in upcoming years how that number compares. But it is an active front for us. There's a lot of projects, and notwithstanding that the sportsplex hasn't gone ahead, 22 million in capital projects is a large amount for a community our size. So I'm not going to go into, so if we can scroll past this section here, the tenders, I won't go into detail there. So we've seen the majority of these. A lot of these were in the June report. So yeah, just to the financial implications, again, the one thing I just like to emphasize is, so yes, we are projecting a surplus of 1.3 million, but it is important to appreciate that a lot of that surplus is due to the grant funding that we did receive, and that grant funding is able to be carried forward and applied to COVID impact for 2021. We have not been advised of any potential grant programs for 2021. So it will be important for us to ensure that we do set aside some funds as we do anticipate there will be an impact to our 2021 operations. So that's the end of my spiel. So if there's any questions, I can take them now.
Well, thank you, Mr. Kitsos, on that comprehensive report. I just want to again expand the importance. I know that there was basically 50% first tranche of dollars on the COVID recovery fund that was allocated a formula base throughout the province. The other 50% was basically communities could apply for this through application. And I think to your point, looking at financially where we are right now today, we wouldn't qualify. And other municipalities, probably bigger centers or others, that are in real negative figures at the end of the year, would be eligible and so forth. So it's and we all know that 2021 COVID is with us, and we're looking at, say, the first 6 months or so. But realistically speaking, even if there was a vaccine that would be introduced in the summer of 2021, the reality is 2021 is a lost year, I think, in my opinion. So we're still going to be, trying to manage, our operations as well. And hopefully we can keep our numbers really low like we are today. And I think that that's a huge benefit to us. And if the audience are listening today, I think this is critical. First of all, pat yourselves all in the back for keeping our numbers here low. But that's the reality. We need to continue to do that if we want to move up to a different stage, as we move up, to keep our economy moving. So the reality is that, yes, it's a big chunk of money. It looks nice compared to, but if we were to compare this 1.3 million today versus the 1 million the year before, it's to me, it's like apples and oranges. And so we need to, I believe, park that obviously in reserve and in rate stabilization or whatever. I think would make great sense, because if we're not going to be eligible to tap into that second phase of dollars, and in our expenses, obviously we want to protect the integrity of the 2021 budget as much as we can moving forward. So I think, first of all, I think in terms of administration, to your team, Tom, corporate services, and to management. I'm telling you right now, we're the envy of many municipalities across this country. And as much as you want to stand on a soapbox and yay, sometimes I don't want, this is one you want to keep under wraps as much as you can. But what you've done, I think, is really protected the integrity of our finances. And I think part of it is what we've done in the past, I think has helped us tremendously and through our life cycle plan and our asset management program. And as you alluded to, $22 million for a community our size, that is huge, in capital under some really tough economic times, really, when you think of it. So, and then come out of this with our financial position as sound as it is. So I can't thank you enough. And again, it's just another one, administratively and for council, all of us. I think it's a huge advantage for us moving into 2021 into, again, clouded times. And so, the recommendation I think should be that those dollars be put into the rate stabilization fund, because there will be a rainy day, I think, in 2021. And if there isn't, God love us, we're going to be ahead of the game because we do have some big projects.
Mhm.
So there is that recommendation. First of all, to receive the report from Mr. Kitsos, Councillor Altenhoff, and Councillor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. And then again, it's more of waiting to see what the final quarter in terms of where we are sitting, because that could either go up or go down. And so we'll certainly, but I think it's important that council understand that think ahead, and when we have our deliberations and for our 2021 budget, we'll have a clearer picture of where we should be. But my recommendation would be that we park that into the rate stabilization fund at the end of the year. Okay, go ahead, Madam CEO.
Thank you. And thank you for your kind words, Mr. Mayor. But I believe that is the standing policy. I'll get Tom to confirm there with respect to the surplus going into the rate stabilization reserve. Tom, could you help me out here?
Yep. Thank you. Through the mayor. Yes. Thanks, Mark. So yes, what will happen at year end, once we get through year end, and if there's a surplus, what we will generally do is any surplus will initially go to the tax rate stabilization reserve up to our target, which is, so we have a target that is set at 15% of our base revenues, and that is best practice. So this, it's not a target that we've made up, it's the target that's best practice. So that's what we try to do. So we will fall below that. We have fallen below that this year. So we started the year at that target. We have fallen a little bit behind. So that would be the first recommendation. In the past, provided that there's no other need and that our tax rate stabilization reserve is healthy, then that's when we would generally go to other reserves that might be needing. And typically that would be the infrastructure reserve.
Yeah, because I believe, I stand to be corrected, that's where we got the dollars to do the burning.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, so we did access the infrastructure reserve for the burning, which was, yes, a non-budgeted capital expenditure.
Yeah, that's why it's important to have those healthy reserves.
Absolutely.
But my concern is generally we have that policy, but
Yeah, I'll say it will always come to council first. So in our year-end variance report, we'll come up with a recommendation, and it's always up to council. Council can choose to put it to another reserve or ask about the balances in specific reserves.
Okay, go ahead.
I could,
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, please. Yes, and absolutely that would be the way that things are undertaken, with council making the final decision. But we recognize what you're saying about the tax stabilization reserve. We also recognize what you're saying about the pressures that we face going into 2021. That's pretty evident now as the senior management team deliberates on the budget that we will bring forward to you shortly. And we know that we're going to be facing some ongoing impacts. And to your point, the more we can do as a community to keep the lights on and the doors open of businesses, the better off everyone will be, including our own recreational facilities and businesses. Paul and his team are doing a yeoman's job of keeping that arena going and in a modified form. And that helps to provide the community with amenities that they were starved of for better part of 2020. And so it fits two bills. It keeps those facilities running, earning some revenue, as well as providing respite for the community in these trying times.
Excellent. 100%. Members of council, any, no, we had a lot of discussion. Did I call the question? Madam Clerk?
Yes, actually.
I believe I did.
I think you did. I got it here.
All right. Well, thank you again for the report. Now we'll move on to planning and building services. We have the planning building services 2020-36. That's a site plan control agreement for 2292-093 Ontario Inc. That's Subaru. That's 1602 Sylvester Drive.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, if we could, you just sort of glossed over the mediation with Book.
No, I put an X on there and I don't know why. Yeah. You did such a good job, Mr. Kitsos, that I was gonna, yes, the mediation, sorry, the final financial services 16 mediation. That's the Windsor Utilities Commission respecting the bulk water supply agreement. If you want to bring that report forward, Mr. Kitsos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll say, first off, we have our solicitor here with us today. Ed Hooker's with us, so he's going to support us in this. Ed's been obviously a key player on the town's negotiating team. And of course, Phil has been greatly involved in the negotiating team as well, and involved with the water and wastewater, the water operations. So with this report, I guess the town purchases water from the city of Windsor, or from Windsor Utilities Commission. So this was an agreement that was initially established in 2004. Its effective date was in 2006 and it has a 50-year term. So that agreement does allow for annual rate increases equivalent to the CPI, or Consumer Price Index. The agreement also allows at each 10-year interval for a rate adjustment. So in 2016, I'm just going back, giving a little bit of history. In 2016 was the first 10-year period that was, so WUC was eligible to request a rate adjustment. So following the agreement, they proposed a rate adjustment, and there is a process in the agreement that allows for rate adjustments. Ultimately, the two sides could not agree to a rate adjustment, so it went to mediation. So in 2019, we brought on, we had a mediator. We went through a mediation arbitration process. Well, sorry, if I back up, in 2018, we agreed. We had to depart from the agreement essentially through the advice of the mediator. So we departed from the agreement just to get a price adjustment for that first 10-year period, which we did, and that was a 3-cent increase. And that was without prejudice to future rate adjustments. And so following that mediation, the mediator challenged basically both sides to get back to the agreement and try to work out something so that for future rate adjustments or future 10-year periods, we could follow the agreement and come up to an agreeable adjustment. So So the two sides got together, and I think it was in May of 2019, and we agreed in principle to a set of interpretive guidelines. So it was found that although I know our side feels strongly about the strength of the agreement, there were some things that could be argued, and ultimately it was found that if we came up with these guidelines, interpretive guidelines, that would assist in future rate adjustments. During the process, it was also suggested that we eliminate the summer levy. So that was another task that we endeavored to do through this process. And then there was also an outstanding issue. So there was a memorandum of understanding that was outstanding for the PJSLC, which I have to go back to see exactly what that means. But that's basically the group, the committee that includes members from the town and from WUC that would get together on a periodic basis to determine what costs would be eligible for a rate adjustment. So those items were outstanding from the first agreement. So through this exercise, we were able to come up with interpretive guidelines. We were also able to develop some schedules that would assist in the rate adjustment, future rate adjustments going forward. And we're also able to work out a blended rate, so to eliminate the summer levy. So currently the town pays we pay a regular rate, and then we pay a summer levy for volumes of water from May to November, I believe. So in excess of the base rate. So that is something that WUC had back originally in their own operations. They worked that out. So we were the only ones left with that summer levy. So it made sense for us to remove that as well. So we were able to do that. A key thing for the town was to ensure that we did keep the agreement. So we were able through the work of this mediation arbitration process to come up with these minutes of settlement that would be attached to our agreement. So it basically leaves the agreement as is and in force, just with these additional interpretive guidelines. So ultimately, we're asking that we're recommending that council approve these minutes of settlement. And we're asking that the solicitor, our town solicitor, be authorized to request the mediator, arbitrator, to give effect to these minutes of settlement to the agreement.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kitsos. I don't know, Mr. Hooker, if there's anything you want to add to, to the workings of the agreement.
No, I had opportunity, Your Worship, to review the report, comment on the report when it was in draft by Mr. Kitsos. I put my best foot forward at that time, so I don't have much to add other than in the minutes of settlement, I specifically had mention made that the City of Windsor, which is technically a party to the original 2004 agreement, did not participate in the mediation, but agreed to be bound by the results, just to kind of close the loop on the contractual relationship there. So that is dealt with in the minutes of settlement, and I'm otherwise satisfied with the content of the report.
Okay, can you explain, Mr. Kitsos, to especially those who are the viewers out there, what impact with the moving forward for the next 10 years? Or
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So what we will experience, so we had a 3-cent increase to our rates back in effective 2017. So up from 2017 to 2025, our rates will increase by the consumer price index only. So in 2026, WUC will have the opportunity to request a rate adjustment. So in between now and then, the PJSLC will get together regularly. I believe we're trying to get together, I think it's at least twice a year. And we'll go over these costs, incurred costs by WUC in their operations. And that's where we would deliberate whether some would be eligible or non-eligible. There is language, and there's a language in the agreement that says if we can't agree, that there is a process in place that will allow an independent accountant and engineer intervene and make that decision. But ultimately for our residents, We did see a bit of a spike in 2000, and so when we implemented the 3-cent increase, it affected a couple of years because it was retroactive to 2017. So we did increase our annual rate increase to our residents from it was intended to be 1% for 2019 and 2020. We raised it to 3% to recover or recoup those additional costs, which we estimated around $100,000. So then, yeah, going forward, of course, we'll input these figures into our updated wastewater rate study, which we will be working on in the upcoming year. And so then, of course, that will filter out through that study what the adjustments will be. But we anticipate increases only for CPI for the next, I think we've got another 8 years to go.
Thank you, because my understanding, being there in 2004 on this agreement, two takeaways that I see moving forward as well is that the spirit and integrity of the agreement that was signed 2004 is now maintained. I know they wanted to make a lot of big changes to it, so kudos to our solicitor and certainly Mr. Kitsos and Mr. Bartnick. And others that were dealing with it, critical. And I think that the biggest piece as well is that any additional increases, I stand to be corrected, but back in the negotiations was basically anything that provincial regulations would add to the cost of the production of the water. Those would be pretty much the only additional increases to the town on top of obviously the CPI and others. Am I correct in saying that as well?
So the agreement allows for 2 types of increases. So we did define them. There's a regulatory price change or a non-regulatory improvement price change. So I'm going to have to read it because I don't remember it off memory, but the RPC means that portion of any increase in the price for water charged by the commission to its customers, which increase is attributable to regulatory change. So that's the one you spoke of. And the NRIPC means a price change caused by non-regulatory improvements made by the commission to its water treatment facilities, which result in significant and measurable improvements in water quality.
So it is maintaining the integrity of the agreement that was signed. I remember those quite. So I think I think it sets it up now, I think with clarity, and I think you've done a great job in doing that so that we don't go through this same type of system of arbitration and others. And hopefully that the next set of negotiations are going to be a lot smoother and understood. So kudos to the negotiating team. I think this is a great output, and it's good for obviously maintaining the integrity of this agreement over the life of the agreement. Mr. Kitsos?
Yeah, and if I could just add that part of the negotiating team, of course, included our former treasurer, Luke Gagnon,
Yep.
Former Public Works Director, Dan Piezik, and Tom Montgomery. So yeah, it was a strong negotiating team for the town. And it was, I'll say for me, it was a really great experience to go through that process. So I learned a lot. So great group of people to work with.
Well, you just named the all-star team. I was there in 2004. I know those guys. Luke, man, Luke can squeeze a nickel and make a quarter out of it. So good on the group. Deputy Mayor Becchetti.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question maybe for Ed or Tom. Thank you for this agreement. With regards to, just for my sake and maybe council, regarding if a neighboring municipality to our east wants water, do they need to review? Is there anything in this WIC agreement that basically a municipality has to work with us in terms of any connection, or do we need permission from WIC? Like, I'm just trying to figure out the, our role versus the one who's making the request, and can we do an agreement to extend water, or do we need special permission? Was that discussed in terms of how that would play out?
Through the mayor, so I'm going to need a little help on this. I know we are limited to a date where there's a daily volume limit that we're capped at through the agreement. And we have supplied a neighboring municipality with water in the past. So we do have that connectivity, and that has been something that we've done. It has occurred, and there's an arrangement in place where it could happen if they needed it. But that was just to service a couple small areas. So I'm gonna look to Ed and Phil here for a little help.
Yeah, I think the existing arrangement has been acknowledged and continues to be acknowledged in the agreement with respect to that particular neighboring municipality. With respect to any additional servicing of other municipalities, I would think we'd have to go back to look and get an understanding that way, because the purpose was to supply the municipality with water, not necessarily to allow flow through supply to other municipalities.
Thank you. And that's what I'm hoping for, is that it's not a done deal. For example, if someone circumvents our town using our pipes to get water and we have no say, I just want to make sure that we're protected in that regard, and that we have some ability to negotiate some revenue if that is the case.
Treat it like electricity. There's transmission costs.
Exactly. That's what I was getting to. Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely. I know exactly where you're going with that. Okay, so a motion, then you're looking for adoption to, I would presume tonight. Ratification of this? Okay. Your pleasure, Council. Move it, Councilor Houston. I support. Councilor Altenhoff. On a report, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Mr. Hooker, thank you. Thank you for everything. This and Tom and Phil and the whole team and the past team and so forth. I think that at least now we've got a little bit of clarity, and I think the spirit of the agreement has been maintained. So good job. All right, planning. Okay, planning and building services, the site plan control agreement at 229293 Ontario Inc. Subaru, 1602 Sylvester Drive. Mr. Hillman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Briefly, an application was filed with the municipality for site plan approval. And it's on a property of just over 4 acres. It's on the screen just southwest of the County Road 22 fly-off where it connects down to Sylvester Drive. These are commercially zoned lands, and the owner has proposed a car dealership on the property. It's a building, a car dealership that would have a size of approximately 21,000 square feet, centrally located in the property with parking for display and visitors to the site of roughly 240 vehicles. Landscaping is shown on the plan as well, and considerable effort was put into addressing stormwater issues and so on. In addition, you'll see on the site plan, and it is spoken to in the agreement, there's a future land dedication that the county is seeking along the County Road 22 that would take into account a widening of the road for future improvements in relation to the County Road 22 Municipal Class EA. The site plan that is in front of council has an agreement associated with it, and it speaks to some of the easements that you'll see on the west side with some of our infrastructure in those easements, and the easement documents and the agreement coincide with that, which indicate that although there can be some works, some improvements on those areas, any need for the municipality to go in and access our infrastructure, it would be the responsibility of the owner of the property to bring those works back to the surface works back to a standard that's proposed in the site plan. And what we're seeking this evening, Mr. Mayor, is for authorization to approve the agreement and execute the document so that the applicant can proceed to finalizing his building permit and proceeding with the development.
Excellent. Questions or comments? Councillor Altenhoff. Move or comment?
I had a question.
Go ahead.
And thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Hillman. I'm just trying to understand the potential future ramifications of really what's kind of presented in attachment 3 of the county proposed land needs in the future, where again, if my interpretation is correct, and please correct me if I am wrong, where we see a potential use, through the heart of those lands. Can you just kind of clarify that? I want to make sure that there's no uncertainties I have in my mind.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thank you for that question. So there is a municipal class EA, as I'd indicated, that was, I think, completed around 2008. And what it identified was the future improvements along 22, down Manning Road. And it also gave regard to a future partial interchange at Les Bronson 22. And that improvement and the future interchange at Les Bronson 22 will have the ability to come out of the city of Windsor, and you will get to Les Bronson Road by going past Les Bronson as it exists today, and you'll come off of a fly-off that currently exists, go down to Sylvester Drive and connect across westerly to Westlake. And that will bring you to Les Bronson, let you access the town Tecumseh. What is shown on this image is that EA found that once County Road 22 expands to 6 lanes and has a posted speed of 100 kilometers an hour, the existing fly-off is of a design that doesn't meet the proper criteria for that type of almost a 400 series type of a highway. So what we've identified on this drawing is a future potential need for a fly-off improvement. We had discussions with the County of Essex at the time that the application for site plan approval was filed with the municipality, and the county concluded, based on their analysis, and there's a quote in the report that speaks to this, that fundamentally the fly-off will not be required for a considerable period of time, given it's associated with the improvements for interchanges. So where we currently have intersections at Manning and an intersection at Les Bronson, those will ultimately be improved to full interchanges and a 6-lane cross-section of 22. And the county's indicating that they do not require that land at this time. And therefore, through the site plan process, if a proponent is not prepared to take the lands that have been identified, then the development basically proceeds. So we've identified this to clearly establish for council that the county has been involved. They have reviewed this. They have sought to have the road widening dealt with along 22 at some point in time. And the agreement speaks to that, but they are not addressing the need for a redesign on the fly-off at this time. So the development is proceeding as if that were not a requirement. Now, if in 20, 30 or 40 years the need arises, the county will have to deal with it either as an expropriation of the property in a developed form, or consider a redesign, or a combination of the two things. Okay, so really it's a question of timing, and as a road authority, that was their decision.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Altenhoff.
Yeah, thank you. So just to really follow up then, I guess all parties are in agreement with what is proposed, to kind of summarize it one nice simple sentence, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, speaking with the road authorities and speaking with them, and as a warden of the county, and that is that they haven't even got a date in mind in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Houston and Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship. And, just following up on Councillor Altenhoff's question, I know when I scratched my head when I did look at, that attachment 3, but I had a conversation with Brian Hillman this morning, Mayor. I know I talked with you, and I mean, if the county's good with it, I'm certainly good with it. Great to see, a new commercial establishment kind of up here in the north end. and really excited to see or get the call, right when the dealership is open. And we all know, this Manning Road area is going to be where development, primary development for us in the North End will expand. So, nice to see this, and hopefully, I know we have that other one, right down the road here that they're expanding, and I think our next meeting, we have that open house on it. So nice to see, some pieces starting to fall and things happening.
Okay, Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. Following up on that question of the county, I guess maybe it's not relevant to the site plan control application, but I'll just express some concern that a 2008 era EA comes to the conclusions that a road structure is expected to be built, and the expected construction date would be beyond a 20-year time frame. Calls in question the reason for the EA if one wasn't going to act upon it. So I'm not sure if if it's warranted for our council to try to get some more clarity on the expected timing from the county, but it just seems to be just not a very good use of resources to commission EA and not implement it if there isn't an intention of actually following through.
I think it's pretty clear with the county, they have no timelines in mind. And number one, and the other thing I must remind, when we were talking about them building, even at that time, a 6-lane, 100-kilometer plus, we have enough issues right now with speeding on Nisi Row Expressway where they're driving 100 plus. I certainly don't want to have vehicles driving 130 kilometers an hour through our community. This is not the 401. It's not a 400 series highway. And it doesn't even make any sense, in that regards. And if you recall, you weren't here, but in 2008, there were some major issues on L'Esperance and Tecumseh Road. With the businesses there, when they talked about a full interchange, that would wipe out Home Hardware, that would wipe out the St. Louis properties. And so there's, the county understands that. And so although the EA is 2008, and by the time, whenever that's going to happen, it won't be in our time, I don't think. Do we stall development? So at the end of the day, if the county says, hey, we're okay, and then it'll be their decision what they have to do with that property 20 years down the road. They got to buy it. But I'll be damned if I stop development in an area that's been ripe for development. And the investments that we made as a community, extending sewer lines along County Road 22, and for the purpose of developing those lands, they can find an alternative to it. So I narrowed the county and I talk to them, often, and I can tell you, Phil has done a great job in having those discussions with them. And it could be 30 years into the future. Remember, they weren't even going to touch 42 and 43 since 2035, if you recall that. And so there is no plan in terms of the county. And they basically said, go ahead. Administration wouldn't be bringing a site plan control agreement in front of us if they didn't have that discussion with the county.
If I could, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Just as a reminder as well, I think at the time that EA came forward, it was near the end of Let's Get Windsor-Essex Moving, an exercise of looking at, some of the existing infrastructure, road infrastructure that existed, and in relation to how do we move transport trucks to and other vehicles to the international border by optimizing the existing infrastructure that we had. So there were a number of projects that took place, a number of EAs, and then ultimately some capital, provincial money came down into this area. And Manning in 22 was thought to be an alternate route. And so that EA commenced. And in the meantime, I remember we called it DRIC at the time, but the international study that was taking place and the Canadian government was taking the lead on, it ultimately selected the route that now exists as the Herb Gray Parkway. So there's a couple of layers of processes that were happening, and that may be influencing the county's feeling now that this EA and its implementation won't happen for some time. In addition to, they're looking at some cost issues as well. But just as some context, that might help.
Yeah, I remember now, and now the 9-point plan. Remember the 9-point plan? John Toffemeyer and company and so forth. Yeah, I remember now. Thank you for that. Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. So just, just as there will be more decisions like this going forward, what I'm hearing is that the plans that we have that have been approved are thrown out. So I don't really know what the future holds in terms of infrastructure improvements. So it's more difficult to look at these developments with that kind of lens, not knowing what is in store in the future, because what is on the books is not going to happen. So it adds for a challenge in this kind of decision making, that we have really no plan for what the future will look like, and we thought we did. And so that's the comment I'll leave it with. I totally agree with your comments that the staff have done all that they can do to get some certainty, but I'll say I'm concerned that we're on this premise that these improvements will happen when it sounds like no, they won't.
Well, and fair enough. But I think what happened in when Let's Get Windsor Essex now moving, that kind of set the bar at that particular time. And with that now, with the 401 expansion and that whole 9-point plan went out the window and so forth, really that environmental assessment, really, you might as well park that on the shelf. And I think this is where the county's coming from, and they're saying things have changed, and the whole issue of potentially having that as the gateway, which none of us really wanted, and including the city of Windsor at that particular time. So I think that's part of the, I guess the confusing part of it is there's an EA that's sitting there that's actually 12 years old. Normally you act on EAs that are 5. And if you go beyond that, then it's, you got to address, those needs. So it could be another 30 years or better before they actually do something. And I think they're going to be hard pressed to figure out how they're going to make an interchange at L'Esperance, if there's ever going to be one. And if they have this, number one, you got a cemetery that, forget it, they'll never move. And then you've got those established businesses, and the costs of expropriating those lands are out of the window, in my opinion. And so the biggest challenges that we have as a municipality on that particular intersection is a right turning lane going southerly, or going northerly, in front of the development. So there's some adjustments that have to be made there because of it is a bottleneck, and certainly in that particular area. So if anything, administration is going to have to sit down with the county and figure out, there's going to be some land acquisition and utilities movement, but I think sooner than later, improvements on that intersection needs to be done, even if it's an improvement that's going to be, good for the next 10 or 15 years, because there is really no activity that's going to happen, I think, in our time, in particular. Okay. Any further questions or comments? Then move to move the recommendation on the site plan control agreement proposed by our building and planning department. Councillor Jobin and Deputy Mayor Becchetti. On the question, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Public Works Environmental Services, again, 2020-34 requests a levy, 2015-2018 municipal drain maintenance costs. Maybe there's Phil. Yes, Mr. Barton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just do a little presentation. So the report before you is to request to levy the municipal drainage maintenance costs for the years of 2015 to 2018. Similar type of report had come before council, I believe last month, with respect to the 2019 maintenance on municipal drains. So the recommendations before you is that the report be received and that a bylaw to levy the maintenance costs for the drains be adopted. And I believe that's on the agenda as well tonight.
Yes, it is.
In Appendix A, gives a list of the municipal drains and the associated costs. The total maintenance costs completed were in excess of 145,000. The town share of this is kind of embedded in the Excel spreadsheet there, but the town share is just over $23,000, which is attributable to 16% of the total cost. The grant, the OMAFRA grant, comes in at 29,000, which is 20% of the costs, which leaves about 93,000 to be assessed to the property owners at about 64% of the total costs. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, thank you. And we can go back to the screen. I cannot see anybody. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Bartning. Any questions or comments on the report as presented? Councillor Altenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And through you, just very quickly to I guess, to Mr. Bartnick, I just want to extend appreciation of thanks for noting that that $23,000 with regards to the the town's assessment value and pulling that out, noting it as kind of a byproduct of what's in Appendix A. Because I was looking at that figure and trying to see where is that in figure or Appendix A, but it's been clarified. The only thing I would suggest in any potential future report of this nature, maybe if we could just spell it out somehow on that Excel file, I think that would be beneficial to the residents. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll certainly take that under advisement. On the report, if no further questions or comments, then a motion to receive the report is presented. Councillor Altenhoff, Councillor Houston, all in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Okay, Madam Clerk, we have 3 bylaws.
Thank you, Your Worship. The bylaws that we have before you on the agenda this evening is bylaw 65, as just reported with regards to amending the drainage assessments. Bylaw number 66 is a bylaw to authorize the signing of the St. Clair Beach Retirement Community Parking Lease Agreement, as also reported on earlier this evening. And lastly, we have bylaw 67, which is a bylaw to authorize the execution of agreement with Olinda Farms, as earlier reported on this evening, in respect of farming of the town's 18 acres of farmland. We're respectfully asking for first and second readings, and if appropriate, third and final.
Okay, thank you. Can have 2 readings on those bylaws. Councillor Jobin and Councillor Altenhoff. Any questions or comments on those bylaws presented? None. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And third and final reading is now in order. Moved by Councillor Houston, and I have support Councillor Dowie. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Unfinished business? Any unfinished business? Yes, Councillor Jobin. Oh, you're muted. There
My
you go.
apologies. I meant for new business. I'll wait. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. New business, then you're on.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you. Previously in the meeting under communications to receive, I didn't get to comment only because I had some freezing issues. So there's two notices, number 2 and number 5. Number 2 about unlicensed and unmonitored cannabis grow ops and cannabis land use management and enforcement issues. I just wanted to acknowledge that in our draft official plan, we do include policies that would help address regulating these types of operations. Into a segue into the next new business of concern, the PIC for the draft official plan is November 4th and 5th. And we have had some questions in reference to the 11-page discussion papers for submission. There's no deadline noted for that. So I'm just wondering up until what time are the 11 pages for submission going to be accepted till? And the PIC is next week. I'm just wondering if we are going to, if we could also push it to the front of the website and repost it on our social media. Also, only because, I'm sorry, my apologies, because I looked at it earlier today, and earlier today there's only 29 views to that space, that PlaySpeak site where residents are required to go to submit their concerns. Earlier today there was only about 29 views, so I'm just wanting to reach to more residents is my concern, not and just wondering what the deadline is as well for the submissions.
And Mr. Hillman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor Jobin. First part with reference to the discussion papers. So just a reminder that those discussion papers were developed over a number of years and did go out actually for an independent, separate public consultation. And there were 2 open houses held, and one was at the north and one was at the south. Those really are background documents that provide broad information, analysis, and so on to the actual development of the draft official plan. So really, although they're there, they're accessible, they help inform anyone who's reviewing the draft new official plan. The intent is that we are now seeking input on the draft official plan itself. It's in a draft form. That there's a lot of material in the discussion papers that might help, one, contextualize some of the policies that are proposed and so on. So I guess the important thing is we're seeking input on the draft new official plan at this point. The intent that we had gone to council with was that we would return in early December for a possibly a statutory public meeting, depending on the input that we receive through the PICs. We had hoped to get the PIC up and running in late October. We had to push it off to early November because of some other PICs that are running at the municipality. So we would be open to receiving comments until the middle of November, which we can more clearly establish. At the PICs themselves, which are next week, we will communicate that with those that we're meeting with. And ultimately, we'll be bringing the information back to council and going to a formal public meeting under the Planning Act, either in early December or early January, depending how things start playing out. The second part of the question, I believe, was with respect to pushing this out from a public perspective. Certainly, we will do that and take that under advisement and make some more pushes on the social media platforms that we have and ensure that people are aware that the opportunity is available at this time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, new business. We do have 1, 2, 3 motions that are being brought forward by Councillor Dowie. The first one is on the public utilities upgrade and resident consultation. Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've put forward this motion as it's just, as I felt it'd be worthwhile for council to express an opinion on expectations for the use of the right of way. I have run into a number of concerns expressed to me about outages caused by utilities breaking each other's utilities, for one, and lack of contact information provided by the utilities for when they're coming in. And so when a sprinkler is damaged or other parts of properties are affected, there's no clear knowledge of who actually is supposed to be contacted. So all in all, we've gone through a lot of calls. I spent a lot of time on this summer, dealing with people who have been visited by these new public utilities. They're very welcome assets, no question about it. There are other municipalities in Essex County that are begging for these kinds of services. So I certainly want to say they are welcome. Thank you to everyone investing in installing public utilities in the municipality and upgrading their infrastructure. And I think just having a little bit of a more consistent sense of information sharing with the residents, making it clear who is responsible for the project, who to contact for any issues, and also, for those utilities that choose not to spray paint their services, which leads to other utilities breaking them when called for locates. I think it's reasonable that when Ontario One Call gives you a shout saying, please map out your plant, that you do what the others do. So, I mean, just so as a member of council, I wanted to set my expectations out there. Hopefully gain the support of my colleagues on this so that we can live a harmonious existence going forward, where residents are able to effectively get their concerns addressed without causing a great deal of difficulty in the meantime. So that's the rationale for this motion.
Okay, can you? All right, well, certainly I tend to agree with you, Councillor Dowie, and so I think this makes sense too. And not only that, but it's also as the aftermath of restoration and of a lot of their works that are doing. And I know that Mr. Bartnick and Kirby, I've been getting a lot of calls, in certainly in that regards. But I can tell you from personal experiences, losing services because of somebody coming in and cutting at phone lines and so forth happened to me personally and other members of my own family. And luckily enough, it wasn't during COVID, but it's still, I look at it as inconvenience, but in lifelines, people are paying for services and so forth. And I think it's a good thing. I agree. Even on the hydro side, when they're coming in and so forth to repair, replace, and improve our infrastructure. But it'd be nice to give them some warning so that especially those working from home can make adjustments and alter their times and so forth. So I certainly do agree with that recommendation. Councillor Ottenhoff.
Thank you, Worship. And through you, I'm happy to support this or second this motion. And I want to applaud the efforts of Councillor Dowie, administration, anyone who's kind of contributed to this. I can tell you that certainly over the COVID pandemic, I've had a number of conversations with our residents south of Tecumseh Road, there was quite a big undertaking by Essex Power, as we know, and there were certainly a number of concerns brought to my attention. I think if I could, I would just ask for a bit of a friendly amendment, if we could look at this. My really only concern is the second point under now, therefore, be it hereby resolved that all public utilities deliver notice of a planned outage to service infrastructure at least 2 business days prior to the planned outage. Based upon my communications with residents, certainly we have individuals working at home, but there's also another dimension to this of family members or residents that have compromised health issues, and they need a bit more time, I think, than 2 business days. In my discussions with some of them, at least a week notice was something that they were certainly favorable towards. I did inquired with administration, and I think they indicated, again, for the planned situation, 7 days wouldn't be unfair. So I would ask for that. And I think it's something that would be a bit more better received by our residents. Thank you.
Councilor Tonio.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank Councillor Dowie for bringing this forward. Obviously, we all have this issue happening in our various wards, but I'm glad he brought it forward so we can start developing, because a lot of our complaints have been dealing with all these service providers, and I would say some of it is unprofessional, the way they've been leaving homes and their properties or entering properties. So I think we do need some guidelines and some regulations. So good job, Councillor Dowie, in bringing this forward. I support it also. Thank you.
Okay, well, so are you looking for this to be dealt with tonight?
If council is so willing to, then yes.
Okay.
However, I mean, given that the construction season is largely coming to an end, I wouldn't see a tremendous urgency, but I do wish to set some guidelines going forward, so that when fiber optic installation is still going on, so we're likely to continue to see these, but I mean, I want to be realistic. I don't expect that a change in procedure or process will trickle down to all the crews this season. So, but if council is willing to approve this tonight, certainly I'd be grateful for it. But if you wish to spend more time with it, or certainly amenable to that.
Okay, so then there's, so you're prepared to move your motion, Councilor Dowie?
Yes, and just I know Councilor Altenhoff had mentioned a potential friendly amendment. I've got 2 schools of thought on it. One is I'm going to go on a limb and say the contractor may just throw our recommendations out if it's found to be too onerous. A week would be phenomenal, but because I don't believe we can enforce this, very strictly, that it's because it's federal regulation, that something, a 2 business day advance warning is something I think is fair and defensible, given how they operate, and that's why I included 2 days. However, I will, I'll consider it friendly, but my rationale for the 2 days is so that it has greater acceptance by the contractors, given that we're not likely to be able to enforce this in any meaningful way.
Yeah, and I think you're dealing with especially a lot of this outdoor work as well as weather. And on 2 days notice, at least you can pretty much gauge yourself. 7 days, you're you could be postponing and moving forward. So I don't know if the expectation then would be postponing it would mean another 7 days and so forth. But I think I think that level, I think you're absolutely right too, is that the CRTC is the governing body in terms of, especially for a lot of them. And so we don't want to make it too onerous in that regard. And so actually, what I've kind of overstepped by the point of order, but let me put this motion forward again through Councillor Dowie, who moves it. Do I have support on his recommendation? Then we'll open it up for comments and others. Supported by Councillor Tonio. Questions or comments? Councillor Omhoff.
Okay, so again, please, as a friendly amendment here, I just bring this point. Look, I put 7 days because, or bring the recommendation of 7 days, because that's what I've heard from our residents with health issues. And they've said, you can't expect me to take a family member out in a period of 2 days. Again, what's been said, enforcement may be difficult. Certainly if we can give it as much time as possible, that's best. Even if we can give them 5 days, I would be fine with 5 days. I just think 2 days is too short for some of the input that I've been receiving. Additionally, in my discussions with administration, they felt that 7 days was, probably a pretty fair time as well. One that's historically been typical. So that's why I think it's important. And again, I'm trying to make this resident focused. I recognize the contractor has concerns. If they choose not to respect this, that's okay. But I think if we can put this in writing, that we would really push and appreciate that time, I think that would be the best for our residents. Thank you.
Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. Perhaps a middle ground could be that we say a minimum 2 days, but ideally 7 days to appropriately communicate our expectation. I mean, the likelihood of them willfully accepting 7 days is probably going to be low with that with such wording, but I think we would recognize the residents' desire while still maintaining the fairness of it by having such wording where we express a desire to have a week, but a minimum of 2 days.
Any further comments? And also, you prepared to make that amendment, and then we'll vote on the amendment. And
yeah, I'm willing to amend the motion and move that amendment if it's going to be supported.
is it okay? I'll look at Councillor Tonio as the mover, or not the mover, but the seconder. Are you okay with the amendment?
Yes, I just don't want to get too confusing for our businesses and residents that we got all these different dates or numbers and how, is it 6 days and the guy gave the notice 2 days? So maybe we should my suggestion would be say 4 days or something like that instead of giving 2 to 7. But Andrew, you brought the motion forward, whatever you think would be logical. I probably can support it either way. Same with Bill. He wants to take care of a resident that has a concern with the time frame. So yeah, we got to marry this up somehow.
Well, yeah.
I'm willing to support it, if that's the question.
Is there, obviously, if it's a health issue and so forth, and if there's some communications with a certain individual, can they make those changes? And maybe in terms of the 2, minimum of 2 and up to 7. I think.
Or suggestion, if it's just a few homes or seniors that Bill, Councillor Altenoff is aware of, maybe they could be flagged to the service utility company, advising them this house needs to be advised more, 7 days.
Well, yeah.
Or are we getting confusing on this one now?
Well, it could be, because at the end of the day, when you're replacing a transformer in 10 homes.
Yeah, all right.
But
I'll wait for Andrew.
2 to 7. Either way. It's I don't want to belittle this and so forth. We have 2 more issues that we got to deal with. But if the mover and the seconder are okay with that as amendment, then I'll just make that as a resolution. Okay.
I'm
On the
gonna,
motion, on the resolution, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Okay, the second is the regulations regarding storage and parking, commercial and recreational vehicles and trailers in residence zones. That's going to be a tough one because I think we've already went through that with, you'd have to have a public meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, that's actually not, I mean, to be honest, whatever the outcome is, I feel this is unfinished business that has been dragging on for the better part of 11 years. There's still conflicts going on between two very different visions of what neighborhoods ought to look like. And I don't have a resolution. I mean, it has not been discussed as long as I've been around the table. When we are unable to address sightline issues because we don't have regulation. And in the former town of Tecumseh, we do for the other constituent municipalities. So you know what, I feel we do need to wrap this one up rather than leave it unfinished, because the very issues that were brought up in 2009 still exist. And I'm getting repeated asks for just some courtesy and respect from certain properties that have just these types of vehicles, and it's not forthcoming. And so because the courtesy is not forthcoming, and I do see a public safety issue when sightlines are being impeded, especially sightlines within the public right of way where these vehicles are parked. That is something that I feel I want to bring forward to see if there is a resolution that's just beyond nothing. And if it comes to a public meeting, then so be it. And we'll get everybody's views to see how we can resolve everybody's interests, if at all possible. So not necessarily discussing the outright prohibition from last time, but what is the middle ground here, where people can still enjoy their properties and enjoy the storage of these vehicles and other equipment without causing harm to your neighbor. And that's what the goal of my motion that's present here.
Well, that one's going to be a tough one because I know we went through that in 09, and between the Old Town and St. Clair Beach, and there's a whole host of different ones. And I know the chamber was full, and these were all recreational folks and so forth, and the grandfathering of those, it's got to go through a whole public process, and we've already done that. And I don't know if I want to, Mr. Hillman, if he wants to add anything there, but it almost sounds like it's a one ward particular issue versus others, because there's no complaints well, there was complaints in Sandwich South and the Hamlet because of their bigger lots and so forth, but they were opposed to any type of amendment. And I don't think you can pick and choose neighborhoods in terms of how and that was the difficulty. If you recall, Mr. Hillman, the public meetings we had, back in the day, and if you can bring any insight to this issue, but this is very complex. And that whole issue of grandfathering as well. You just can't tell somebody now you can't have your motorhome or whatever parked in your driveway.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do recall the public meetings, and they're not unique to Tecumseh, and it's not to say that it can't be revisited. And we too, I think administratively, do hear the opposing views and understand Councillor Dowie's issues that he's bringing to all of council this evening. And, you know, just in past experience in other municipalities, this is just a challenging issue, and there's very strong held opposing views, and there's not any right or wrong way to handle it, but it does become, and I thought it was interesting that Councillor Dowie mentioned, you know, what is the vision? And I think that's a fair question, and ultimately it becomes what is it that council ultimately wants to decide on it? Because I would suspect we'll see quite divergent views on that front, and could a compromise be found, perhaps? But you know, it was a trying experience at the time, and I've seen it in other municipalities. I've been involved in my prior life outside of Tecumseh and other similar experiences. So, you know, I think it's like a lot of planning issues. There's multiple views, and you work through those, I guess, at some point. But and again, I would just say that we have heard concern from residents over time on this issue, from both views, from both perspectives.
From both sides, yes. Yeah.
From both sides. Yeah, there's a lot of different views on this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a tough one, and I understand fully. I mean, that was one of the reasons why I left my neighborhood and moved into the new one. And I've got a covenant now that the 48 people that live on our street cannot park vehicles outside of automobiles on the street or in their driveways. And you know, I was surrounded by boat trailers and trailers. I get it. You know, it's a tough one, but I'll tell you, be ready to get the onslaught, because now you're going to be it'll be neighbor against neighbor, and that's what happened in 09. So you know, I'm not saying that we shouldn't revisit. I think you're right, Mr. Hillman, in sort of in that regards, but be prepared to receive both sides of the coin. And I stand to be corrected, but I don't believe there's one municipality in the county that has a bylaw that says you cannot have vehicles in your driveways. Maybe certain parts of it, but I don't think anything, because that was the argument that was brought in 09. Then when you looked at it, they were all kind of a mismatch. Councillor Houston and Deputy Mayor Bichetti, and then Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Your Worship, and maybe a question for Councillor Dowie. I hear a line again. I wasn't here in 09, so I should really be brought up to speed on exactly all what went down. But as I read the motion here, it's referencing municipal right of way, right? Not driveways. And I know we're speaking here a lot about private driveways.
Many driveways. I'm going to jump in here, Councillor Houston. There are many driveways that cut through the municipal right of way, and they're parked there. And whether it's the tongue of the trailer or whatever, it's on the municipal right of way of the area. I mean, if there's a sidewalk there, that's one thing. It's impeding, but I've seen them when the trailer takes the full, and I get the vision piece. And so 10 feet of that driveway is sitting on municipal property. Go drive across the whole community, and it's everywhere. There isn't a street that doesn't have, except ours.
No, and through you, just to, I was visualizing in my mind, on the street, right? Versus, I guess that first, 10 feet of a driveway. So
yeah,
that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Bichetti.
Thank you, Mayor. Just like Councillor Houston mentioned regarding the history of that, I remember and recall we had a staff employee in the building department or planning department that went out and took pictures because we were prepared to possibly ban them or remove them. But those that had them, they would be grandfathered. I remember that discussion. And so I know the town might have some report or background that this council would be beneficial to review, if that could be emailed to the council members, because there were many individuals that came for and against regarding that situation there and that issue. it's not going to change. It's 10 years later, but you may have a few people that got rid of their trailers. There's a few people that got more, but the issue is going to be the same. So I think it'd be beneficial to share that report from 2009. And I remember, if I'm not mistaken, we had legal opinion as well. And so there's certain things that we could and could not do. So I think when that comes into play, if we get that background, that would help us, in terms of moving forward with the decision now in 2020. So I would recommend that we maybe defer this motion for now and maybe get some more background and then bring it back as a new report if that's something that Councillor Dowie would like to amend and maybe go at it differently. I'm open to that. But the official plans, we're consolidating those. Is there another opportunity to revisit this? But I'd like administration's background report on this so that we could have more of a informed discussion.
Okay, I believe the next speaker was Councillor Dowie, but unless you want to put a motion to defer and then.
Well, before I go, I did, Mayor, I see Mr. Hillman wanted to make a comment, so I'd like to wait for his comment before speaking.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you, Councillor Dowie, and through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could just, I think one of the options, certainly we can recirculate the materials that were provided to council at the time that it was last discussed, a number of council sessions ago. But also I would like to just put on the table, I guess, just for consideration. So as was referenced by the Deputy Mayor, we are at this point now tabling, as we haven't tabled, we've put in front of the public a draft new official plan for consideration townwide. The hope is that council will be in a position to adopt that very early in the new year. The next step in the process of implementation, of course, there are a number of things that will happen to implement. The major component of that, though, is to bring forward now a townwide zoning bylaw. And that is a process it's fairly onerous, but it's necessary. And that maybe is a time to bring forward a municipal-wide consideration on this issue. It's a significant document, and we certainly can spend some separate time on this issue. It has some history. Now that would put that out a little bit in terms of probably, if given other things we're looking at, probably not next year, but the following year, in terms of having something to put out for council review and public consideration. And of course, just to be clear, a new zoning bylaw, not unlike a zoning bylaw amendment, has to go through a statutory public process. And I know that council will want input nonetheless, but the Planning Act certainly sets out, some requirements in that regard as well. So that is another option I just wanted to make available to Councillor Dowie and to council during this discussion.
I would think that is a good option, because I really believe that the time frame is critical, and Zoom is certainly, that platform is not going to be conducive, because I can remember the chamber was full when we had the meetings, and so I don't know how many people you can put on Zoom, but they will come out, and as they did in 2009. And so the report that, or the reports, and certainly the pictures in that, I think to Deputy Mayor's comments, I think are good. But I think your option that the planner has put forward, I think, is a good one. And because this is a tricky one. And there are a lot of people out there that have recreational vehicles, and they've had them for years. And now all of a sudden you're going to say, hey, you can't have them in your driveway. So good luck with that one, because it was very heated. And so I think that with at least bringing a new official plan, putting the communities together, I think that is an opportunity. I think that would better serve on bringing this forward. Councillor Dowie.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, and I definitely agree. I think that would actually, Mr. Hillman's suggestion would absolutely meet the intent of my motion, and that's certainly the direction I wish to follow. But I do want to reiterate, this motion is not seeking a prohibition of those vehicles on private driveways. It is seeking a regulation for their presence on the public right-of-way and potentially in the minimum side yard of properties where they can cause some degree of challenges for their abutting neighbors. So I think it's important to make that distinction. There's no prohibition here. It is simply an indication of where these are appropriately placed on the properties. That was the intent of this motion, not a prohibition.
Well, and I just want to reemphasize that there are many out there that would be in prohibition, or they would be in violation. Go down Michael Drive, go down Revland, and go up down a lot of them, and you'll see they're basically there and they're sitting on partially or a good portion of it. So. You know, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to not be happy and because of it. So, but I think it is an opportunity under a new official plan to unify the community in terms of the bylaws. We tried that, and we know on the setbacks on sheds, it took us a long time to get that one and done. And you can't adapt the ones that are from Sandwich South because of the 100-foot frontage lots. And then St. Clair Beach has one where you can only bring them in for a certain amount of time and so forth. So is there something in between that? Maybe, you know, but I'm certainly not prepared to recommend either way. I've been through it, and but I feel for neighbors that have to look at a boat for 6 months of the year or 12 months of the year for that matter. But I think it's one of those that the cattle's out of the barn, and you're no pun intended, Councillor Jobin, and you're trying to round them up and put them back into the barn. Okay. Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and just listening to the conversation and perhaps want to just maybe present an option to Councillor Dowie's motion on the paragraph. Now, therefore, be it hereby resolved, perhaps that the Tecumseh Town Council requests that administration be requested to bring considerations to regulate the parking of these vehicles, units, and trailers within the municipal right-of-way in the former town of Tecumseh to ensure that visibility and sight lines are maintained to private driveways and to recommend appropriate regulations surrounding the parking of such vehicles, units, and trailers in the minimum side yard of a private property at the time the town zoning bylaw is reviewed.
It's certainly fine and reflects the intent of my motion. So if that's a motion I need to make, that's I'm happy to make.
Okay, it's moved by Councillor Dowie. Do I have support on his motion? Deputy Mayor Bichetti. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, the motion carries. All right, move on to number 3, short-term rentals. This motion was also brought forward by Councillor Dowie.
Thank you, Worship. So bring this matter forward as I continue, despite all of administration's efforts and the police's efforts to address some of these properties. It just doesn't seem to be effective. I did go through the Airbnb good neighbor process to try and obtain some sort of answer with respect to a known contravention. And they closed my file without giving me any sort of detail. And a subsequent outreach to Airbnb about that program was left unanswered. So looking at what the province had released in terms of the sharing economy and its direction, most of the policies spoke to home sharing, which means you reside in the property. When you're on vacation or you have a unit on your property, that is a great opportunity to reflect good sound playing principles, making better use of your property. And I'm in full agreement with that. The where the calls that I've been getting, and they've been ramping up this summer, are related. It's where the owner is absent completely from the situation. They do not reside in the property, and they also do not seem to be responsive to the pleas of neighbors to vet the tenants or have some sort of consequence, or even show some compassion and some courtesy for any problems that their tenants have caused. So my ask here is whether the administration can come back with an analysis of the recently passed municipal bylaws to see if there's any merit to introducing some components of them to help lessen the police calls that we are experiencing to some of these properties, and to help improve the cohesion in the neighborhood from those who are coming in, not showing a great deal of respect for those who are there and leaving the next night, and the lack of response of those owners when the neighbors approach them to advise of their concerns. So that's the rationale for my motion, and I hope town council sees fit to support it.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Buchetti.
Thank you, Mayor. I totally support this. It's an issue. I know you dealt with it as well.
Yep.
We need to do something. I know the city of Windsor's looked at it. The Toronto has some bylaws regulating the Airbnbs. So this is natural for us, and the timing is right. And I want to thank Councillor Dowie for bringing this forward so that it is on our agenda, so that maybe we can, segue with the city of Windsor so that it's a regional approach. I'm not sure what the town of LaSalle is doing, but we have to give the message that we have to regulate these to maintain the cohesion of the neighborhood. So I'd be happy to support this motion.
Okay, anybody else? Anybody else? What do we got? I certainly support it because I've had enough phone calls, and when you have 30 to 40 people in one house, and people coming in from the GTA, and right now with COVID, and 4 residents surrounding this one particular home went up for sale because they just couldn't take it anymore. And so I fully agree. There has to be a semblance of responsible owners and operators of these Airbnb, because they should be fading into the neighborhood and not exploding within the communities. And we've had so many of us that have gotten a lot of calls. I know administration, Mr. Hillman and others have tried to deal with it, and working. I think yourself, Deputy Mayor, you've actually tried to call the Airbnb operators and so forth, and really, and they kind of shrug their shoulders and so forth. Just to put some context too, with COVID, I don't know if people were aware, but in just south of Montreal, there was a same thing, Airbnb. young folks went there and they thought they could party. There was 80 of them under COVID. 80, you can imagine, in the neighborhoods in that area. So police intervened and certainly handed out the tickets. But again, it shouldn't be a free for all. There should be some regulations, and there should be some licensing. I know we're not in the licensing business here, but this is one area that I think we're going to have to look at, so that those who don't want to respect their neighbors, then at least some legislation or some regulations at our level will bring that to bear on them. So I fully support this this motion, and I'm sure that the neighbors will support this wholeheartedly. So you did move it, Councillor Dowie, and supported by, I believe the Deputy Mayor said he would support this here. If there's no further questions or comments on this one here, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimous. All right. We'll move on to a confirmatory bylaw, 3 readings to confer the proceedings of this.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yep. New business. You still got some?
No, before we conclude the meeting, I just want to congratulate Mayor McNamara being a proud new no-no. Him and Heather had another grandson to the McNamara clan, Xavier Brody, 9 pounds, 1 ounce. So congratulations, Mayor McNamara, on a new grandson addition to the McNamara family.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. And so if I was a little off tonight, that's my excuse. But anyway, so just a wonderful addition, and mom and dad and baby and everybody's doing great. So we're very pleased. So thank you again for the well wishes, and certainly the emails and so forth that have come in. So thank you. All right, confirmatory bylaw. I'll try it again. We'll move 3 readings to confirm the proceedings of this meeting this evening. Councillor Altenhoff and Councillor Jobin. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Any notices of motion this evening? Don't hear any. Then our next meeting will be Tuesday, November the 10th at 6 p.m. Our public meeting. Zoning bylaw amendment, Wins Holdings, Inc., 11 Wins. That's at 13375 Desert Drive. And then our regular council meeting at 7 o'clock. And certainly between now and certainly November 10th, because of COVID, a lot of our ceremonies for Remembrance Day will be abated this year in particular, but it certainly shouldn't take away from all of us to keep that in certainly in our memories, and to the men and women who fought for our country, for what we have today, and also to honor the men and women that still wear the uniform for us, and as well as our first responders. And so somehow, if you can get a contribution to the Legion on their Poppy Fund to help support veterans, please do so. And because obviously COVID's here, but that doesn't preclude the needs for our veterans in all of our communities. So with that, members of council, adjournment is certainly in order. If there's no further business, Councillor Tonio and Councillor Houston on the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you very much, members of council. This was a very good meeting, very lively meeting, and I think a lot accomplished this evening, and to administration as well. And to those who are streaming from the comforts of your home, thank you for joining us this evening. And until we meet again on November the 10th, stay safe, and we'll see you then.